The Oxford Dictionary describes imitation as the sincerest form of flattery, while Oscar Wilde, he disagrees vehemently, describing imitation as the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. Dids co-founded Acid Anti-Copying in Design, and her work has made history by championing and changing design law. Let's find out more from the woman changing the legal framework to end copying in the design industry. Dids, welcome.
Thank you.
What a pleasure. I've been so looking forward to this podcast. Where have you come from today?
Well, I've been in and around town at various meetings, so around the SE1 and Chelsea and so forth.
You're very, very busy. Now, you first of all, before we talk about who you are, it's customary to start with an icebreaker, which means if you can either share a piece of information or show us something that people wouldn't typically associate with you. Should we start with that?
Good. Okay. Well, the only thing I could grab at the last moment was this. It's a Concord wallet.
Right.
And the significance of that many people might not know is that I started off my career in the airline, and I used to be a air cabin crew, and I was
Concord the plane.
Yeah, and luckily enough, I was on the proving flights of Concord.
No way.
And I was lucky enough subsequently when I left to be a passenger. So I carry that round as a kind of, it's an emblem or a token or a talisman of 12 years of a fantastic life with that, which I absolutely adored.
What was it like to be an air hostess?
Fast. Sorry, what was it like?
Was it fast? Concord? Did it feel fast?
Well, yes. It goes at Mach 2, which is 1,300 miles an hour. So
versus a normal plane, which flies at what speed?
550, 600. So at Mach 1, which is the speed of sound, when you go over it, you get a slight bump. And then when you go over Mach 2, you get another bump. So it's twice the speed of sound.
You don't mess around. So you work for the world's best aircraft.
Well, I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
How so?
Well, they were recruiting at the time for people who wanted to go on Concorde, and I was selected, so I was very lucky.
What was the selection criteria to get onto Concorde?
Who knows? I don't know, but whatever it was, about 400 of us were chosen out of, I think at that time they had 6,000 cabin crew. So we were just very lucky. It's like a lot of things in life, luck. And then when you get the opportunity, you seize it. So I had 4 very happy years flying on the flagship plane, which I'm terribly upset has finished. So, but it was an amazing experience, aeronautical and design and engineering feat, and just one of the best times of my life.
Wonderful! What a fantastic piece of history. That's spectacular. So from Concorde to intellectual property. Is that what's the leap? How did you get into the design world first and foremost?
Well, after a flying career, and at that time women didn't have the opportunities. There weren't equal opportunities. And so I decided to leave. And at that time they were offering severance. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get on here. It was sort of, dead men's shoes, really. So a friend and I decided to leave, and we started an interior design business. And we're very lucky again because we got a job for one of the crown princes of Saudi Arabia.
Wait, just back up for a second. So you leave the airline and your first job is with one of the crown princes.
Correct.
You are a superstar.
Well, again, there was an awful lot of luck, but if you get the opportunity to do a job like that, you have to deliver. So it was apartments behind Harrods, and there's something like 24 bedrooms, and they had to get it ready for the royal family coming in the August.
This is your first project, 24 bedrooms?
Yes.
And you're cold off the blocks?
Yes.
I love you.
Well, I think, nobody else in London would touch it because the lead time was so short.
What was the lead time?
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was something like 2 months.
And this was home staging, or was this this dirty work? Was this construction?
It was interior. We had to have, redecorate. We had to recover all the sofas. There were about, 24 sofas. We chose silk from Venice that hadn't even been spun. We had to get most beautiful curtains made in a very, very short period of time. The walls at that time, the fashion at that time was to put silk moire on the walls. So we got a whole team in there. The lifts broke, so we had to get them to camp on site. Because we had a team of upholsterers, a team of curtain makers. We had to resurface a marquetry table, so we had to get cabinet makers in.
A lot of what you're talking about is premium products, quite exclusive luxury items. Were you familiar with curating from this?
Well, not really, but we learnt very quickly. We were working with a very talented artist, a trompe-l'oeil artist, and he had all the contacts. So we gave him all the work of, doing all the trompe-l'oeil and artwork, etc. And he gave us all the entrees into the best Percheron, Rubelli, all the sort of best fabrics. And so between us, we just said, well, we've got nothing to lose. I think one of the things about working on the airline was it taught you, discipline, working to a deadline, and delivering the goods. So, I mean, if you took off on an aircraft and it didn't have something, you've got to make do.
So you're resourceful by nature.
Well, I think it again, you know what it's like when you're young. You just say, well, yes, I can do that. A bit like Catherine Tate. And fortunately, we did it. And unfortunately, the royal family came that summer, and the children ruined it all.
How did they ruin it?
Well, they roller skated on the marquetry
it's just
table, and so of course we got the job to do it again. So not that anybody would want to have to do beautiful work again, but from there it sort of grounded us in terms of we were able to buy premises, and we were able to buy a company car, and we were able to fund our business. So we started off well, and because of that, we got noticed because we had a lot of budget, and so we were spending money, and people were saying, well, who are these new kids on the block spending all this money? And so it was an exciting time, and it was, we got invited to house and garden, parties around the table where we'd bring in these 12-foot trompe-l'oeil pieces, and we'd drink champagne and everything. So it was halcyon days, but it was also very hard work, and it was if we hadn't delivered, we wouldn't have got any further work. So
can you share another story about one of your highlight projects?
Well, we carried on from there and did an Omani diplomat's house in Wilton Crescent. And
you are not messing around, are you?
Well, again, it was through contacts, and I guess because we'd delivered, it was, they said, well, this
Absolutely.
team, by that time we'd built up a team that we could work with.
So you're not only learning how to interior design, but you were learning how the administration side of things, you were learning how to project manage and manage a team.
Yeah. Project management is critical, as you know, and it was important to get all the trades at the right time, make sure you got the right contracts, and again, deliver and have high standards. So again, we were very, very lucky, and from that came other work, a couple of hotels, and we worked a lot doing refurbishments for apartments in Chelsea Cloisters. They were just refurbishing them all for let, and so we used to turn them. We had a kind of made up a if you like, a recipe for turning them around very quickly, so that they were, rentable the minute they'd, the trades had come out, they could be rented.
And what was your formula for renting?
Well, it was setting it out so anybody would walk in, and there was, bottle of champagne and 2 glasses and all that sort of thing. Beautiful linen, beautiful high quality workmanship, but also being able to use a small space very well, because they're tiny apartments.
What were some of your tips and tricks?
Well, a lot of mirrors, because obviously that makes tiny rooms look bigger, and so they've got storage behind the a front of a cupboard or a mirror or whatever, and minimal but comfortable, and again using the best of the best.
So what time span are we talking about for your design career?
Well, after leaving flying, we had an interior design company that lasted 8 years. And then we worked out that there weren't very many decorative accessories to choose from when we were specifying. So we decided to design our own range.
Very smart. Now, this is also very progressive at that time, because I heard you saying post-Concord, there wasn't equal rights necessarily for women.
Mm. So I think that was around 1982, 1983. And
so you were a bit of a trailblazer.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's seizing opportunities and being, always never taking no for an answer with a double negative. It's a can-do attitude, and I think if you do have that, then, the world's your oyster.
And how did you transition from the interior design aspect of the process to manufacturing your own products?
Well, again, that was at the time when there was the first property crash, and we actually ran out of business, to be quite honest. So we had to, decide to put another hat on. So we moved from Chelsea Harbour and Lots Road to a place in Wimbledon where we had a sort of workshop, and then we had a dedicated area in a factory in the north of England where the moulds were made for the tassels and the finials and the products that we used to design. And then we'd have a team in Wimbledon and hand paint them and put gold leaf on them. And then we developed that into matching beautiful fabrics.
So the tassels, are these for curtains, and the finials?
Curtain tassels and finials, and they're solid.
For the end of poles?
Yes.
Good.
So we'd mix the tassels with pince-montre from Lyon. And so they'd have a solid top, which would be made in the colours of the fabric and gold leafed. And then we'd have the tassels made in Lyon.
Where did you come up with this idea that curtain upholstery and upholstery was going to be a valuable...
Well, again, Geoffrey was a huge influence in that,
Is this your business partner?
No, my business partner was another Concorde stewardess who'd studied interior design. So she had the design background. I had more of a business background. And Geoffrey was, extremely talented as an artist.
Is
and
he
also
your partner?
No. Sadly, Geoffrey died, but he left a legacy of beautiful work in some beautiful houses in London and in the surroundings. He did a wonderful trompe-l'oeil in Ham House.
Oh, lovely!
In the stables in Ham House. Just the most talented man. So we're very fortunate to have being able to work with him.
And he was part of your design team?
Yes,
the three of you. Okay, I understand. And then you decided to move into finials and tassels.
Correct.
Why did you choose those particular products?
I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I think again, because there were so many, there wasn't much to choose on at that time. And since then, of course, there's been an explosion, which is wonderful. But there was very little choice then. So that's when we decided to design our own range. And
did you create a business plan? And what was your starting point?
No, we just leapt in.
Love it.
And
you didn't do a competitive review of the marketplace?
No.
Profit margins?
No.
Amazing.
So the company was called Holbein, and it was one of the only companies to have a product on the front cover of the World of Interiors, because I don't know if it's changed now, but they never used to put product on the front cover. So we thought that we must be, good at what we do to be recognised in that way. And it was small, it was niche, it was a very small team. And again, it was very interesting work because we were working with beautiful fabrics.
And what sort of designs? I mean, how did you come up with the designs?
We called them after British cathedrals. So we had Westminster, Salisbury, York Minster. So we had a range of 8 of them. We designed some lamp bases, and we used to do those in decorative finishes, and some altar sticks, which was from an old Venetian, inspired by a Venetian altar sticks, and we used to decorate those for candles. So.
See, when I look at you, I'm making assumptions you're very, very elegant. And it doesn't surprise me that you are an air stewardess for Concorde, because their hiring strategy, I'm sure, would have been almost like a regal elegance, like an inner confidence, and you exude that. And then to hear the names of the products that you've launched associated with cathedrals, that also shares those same sort of regal, almost premium values. And then I hear you saying that this is all quite instinctive. Your process was is that right?
Well, I think if one looks back and you think, well, what I should have done, I should have had a business, or we should have had a business plan. But at the end of it, the good fortune that we have then to have the property crash, and suddenly there wasn't the budget to do interiors at that time, and everything was fairly dour. So it was really dusting yourself off and saying, well, what should we do now? And I think we didn't give it too much thought. I mean, now my advice to anybody starting off would be to, do your homework, and there is so much competition out there. So, and there's so much mentoring and advice out there, which is fabulous. We didn't have that then. So I keep saying luck, and we were lucky, but we were also good at what we did. Mm. So, like everything, there's an evolution. Things change, and you just have to adapt.
Take the front page of a magazine that is considered in the industry to be very prestigious, that's quite a coup.
Well, we were quite thrilled, I have to say.
And then what happened?
Well, then that's when, because we were good at what we did, of course, everybody saw it, and because it was so different, that's when the copying started. And if you can imagine, well, I know you can imagine, from idea to marketplace, what goes into getting it to marketplace before you even, get any revenue from it. There's the designing, there's the prototypes, there's the marketing, there's funding your team through that. So when somebody decides to just steal it, basically, you get very angry. And at that time, I got extremely angry, because a lot of the companies were much bigger companies that really could have afforded to commission us and pay us a royalty or a fee or whatever, and we'd have been delighted to.
You would have been happy to white label your products.
Yeah.
And what was happening? They were absolutely knocking these products off to a T, so they looked almost identical, or were they changing some aspect of them?
Well, no two incidents are the same. The first one was a very well-known company, international company within the curtain trimmings business, and they took one of our products and made it much smaller, made it cheaper. They were going to put it out into their sheds, I think they're called, in their droves. And this was a company with a £450 million turnover. So I bought a share in the company. We couldn't afford to pick up the telephone to a lawyer. So I bought a share in the company. I phoned the marketing director who'd been saying, well, you'll never win against us. I said, well, look, I can't afford to take this any further because it's too costly. At that time, we already spent, £5,000 or so in legal fees, getting nowhere.
So they'd already admitted, the marketing team had already admitted that actually there was an element of copying going on.
They used as a defence the fact that it was much smaller, it was in a different surface decoration, but in legal terms they'd copied the shape and configuration, they'd copied the ornamentation. So it was clear that they could have gone on and on defending that. So I telephoned the guy and I said, look, we know it's a copy because we've got our design corpus behind it. signed and dated drawings.
What's a design corpus?
It's signed and dated drawings. It's evidence. It's all taking photographs, signed and dated photographs of prototype, final copy, final product. And also we've got magazine coverage, etc. So there's quite a lot of evidence behind our designs. And they were having an annual general meeting at Claridge's. So I said, look, I will be outside Claridge's. I'll have a billboard. Had one or two friends in the media. And I said, I'll put the billboard on. I'll take it off and I'll come into the annual general meeting, because at that time you could as a shareholder. I said, I've got one share.
And did you know that? Did you know if you bought one share, you could go into the annual
Yes,
general?
at that time you could.
Do not cross Dids.
Anyway, and I said to him, I'm going to be asking your main board of directors, are they aware of your practices, your purchasing practices, or not, as the case may be? And I actually got a check. It's in the days of checks. I got a check the next day for our costs and an admission that they wouldn't sell the products any further.
Now that is fascinating. And what was the basis for them giving you back your costs?
I think they were frightened of reputational damage.
Because you'd stood outside their shareholders' meeting with a banner on.
Well, yeah. And I was going to carry it through. I was going to call some editors and see if I had got somebody on hand that was going to take a photograph and do the story.
That is fascinating.
So, and the other, there were quite a lot of instances, some by well-known UK high street retailers. And this is a practice that sadly is currently going on, where product designers take their products into buying departments. And in this particular case, we did little baby tassels for lights and blinds. That was the next stage. And I took them into the buying department of a well-known high street retailer, and they sent them off to Portugal, brought them back into this country, and one of my team said, "Oh, Dids, well done for getting them into XYZ." I said, "We're not in there. They wouldn't have them because they were too expensive." Again, all this takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of emotion.
They'd replicated your exact design.
Well, no, they'd taken the top of one and the bottom of another, and their defence was that they'd created a new design.
Is that not the case?
No. There are some common myths, and one of the myths is that people can change something by 7% or 10% or 20% and it becomes a new design. That's a complete myth. And the other myth is the number of times that you change something. So I had a particularly gorgeous lawyer called Simon Clark, and he helped me a lot. And he said, "We're going to defend this, Dids. We've got a registered design." And he managed to prove that it was a copy. The retailer in this case wouldn't back down, and they agreed to settle it and pay my costs, which is fine. But the current culture is that a lot of retailers who copy go all the way from a letter before action to just before a court hearing. And then they'll back down, and then they'll slap on a confidentiality agreement. And that's happened time and time and time again. And so...
And is that not a process that you're happy with?
No, this is one of the reasons that we're launching on British Intellectual Property Day our campaign, which is an ACID IP charter.
Just dechunk the acronym. ACID is
Anti-copying in design.
Anti-copying in design. And this is a company that you founded. You're not messing around, are you? You are getting on with your life. This is a company you founded over 25 years ago.
Yeah.
To stop people copying design.
Yes. I feel very passionately about it because I've seen not only our own designs copied, and it's really a sanitised word for theft, but I've seen a lot of small businesses. We were a micro business.
I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. So you mentioned to me that the first company that copied you when you were a smaller company was a much larger company. For anybody listening to this, they might be in the same position and assume that it costs significant money to combat.
It does. And this is because access to the legal system, although ACID was successful in introducing a small claims track, it's still very, very complicated. And if you think of what a designer, what a lawyer charges per hour, it's very difficult for lone, micro and small companies to be able to take legal action. And if you look at the makeup of UK designers, there are 1.97 million people involved in design and design skills. And at the last count, this was worth £85.4 billion to the UK economy. So there's an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of design for this country. It's a huge USP. But then a lot of them, 80% are small businesses. When I say small businesses, that's under 10 employees.
And your company that you founded, ACID, if anybody is experiencing infringement of copyright or infringement of design, if they approach your company, there are resources?
There's resources in initial free legal help. Our objectives remain the same as when we first started, which is education and awareness so that you become IP savvy.
Good.
And prevention, deterrence, and support. Support if things go wrong, and we've got 5 sets of lawyers who will give initial free advice, and support to actually champion things that go right. So we spend a lot of time shouting from the rooftops about our members and their designs and their innovations. And wherever we can, we shout as loudly as we possibly can at Westminster with government policymakers to ensure that this precious commodity, which is UK design, is supported. And I regret to say that thus far it has not been supported. There has been a recent call for views on design and IP, which is the second in 20 years. And it's just about to come out, so we're looking forward to seeing whether they've listened to our evidence. And we've sent evidence in from case studies where small fashion designers have been ripped off by major foreign retail behemoths, and it's simply not fair.
Can you explain the process? How anybody listening to this that has designed something unique and innovative, how they can set about protecting that design?
Well, first of all, I think that it's important to be proactive. So we have sort of 10 steps to create a proactive IP strategy. So that feeds to deterrence and prevention. If you can register your designs, register them.
With who?
The Intellectual Property Office. And if you can't register your designs, ACID has an IP data bank that holds about 300,000 copies of people's copyright work, that's 2D, and 3D designs.
Good.
And so it's a way of safeguarding it, and it's also a way to communicate that you're not prepared to put up with copying. So a lot of our members will use our logo. It's a very simple logo. It says what it does on the tin, which is anti-copying in design. And members use it with a simple statement which says all intellectual property rights in our designs are and will remain the property of, and then you say Dids Macdonald or whomever, any infringements will be taken seriously. So it's really about not when the horse has bolted.
And so be proactive.
Be proactive, register where possible, know about your rights, know what help is available. One of the things that happens is a lot of designers are isolated, and so there's nowhere to turn. A lot of them are one-man bands. And so it's important to have a helpline, which we provide, where you can actually talk to somebody and let off steam, and because it's a very emotional thing. when your designs are stolen.
I can imagine it. So it's, being involved in the design process, it almost becomes like your baby. It's something that you're very protective over, and you spend hours and hours, and you have unique processes and ways of seeing things to create these unique products.
Well, not everybody can design, and people think that design is some sort of fairy dust that's just sprinkled on something. Everything around us is designed, from iconic to everyday. And it's not only the lone and small companies, but we have a lot of well-known designers and manufacturers in this country who suffer the same problems. They're design-led, so of course everybody follows.
What's the cost associated with registering your IP?
Well, again, through some of our reforms, we've managed to get the costs down. It's £60 for one registration, and then there's a sliding scale down. But it's not just the cost of registering a design. It's actually, if you register a design and it's infringed, it's the cost and the time to take legal action. So the whole point is to try and change the culture that it's okay to steal and free ride on another's, design equity, really. So in the same way that a lot of campaigns, there's a sudden about turn and somebody, people get it. So at the moment, we're trying to get retailers on side to say, commission it, don't copy it. Support British design. Support British designers.
And the way that they could support British designers would be to commission the designer?
Well, in some cases, commission designs, employ designers to do original work instead of looking at the market and seeing what's successful and then saying, oh, we'll have a bit of that.
And that's the thing that irks, looking at something, be it a product or a person that's created something that's been a financial success, and then stealing that.
Yeah. I mean, our
Not doing their own
campaign is
work.
about ethics and compliance and respect for IP. And it really should be a tick box in any corporate social responsibility rules. Any FTSE 100 company should have a statement about their respect for intellectual property. And it's the big guys that are doing it, and an awful lot of foreign companies are guilty of taking the fast track to market.
Well, it almost goes hand in hand with sustainability. For me, what I'm seeing is, ethics is almost about being kind. It's being respectful. It's not ripping off other people. It's actually taking responsibility and realising actually that person, has mouths to feed. It's not just you that has, you big conglomerate that has mouths to feed. It's also the other little people that have mouths to feed. So don't steal. Have you got any success stories that you can share?
Well, we have thousands of successful settlements on behalf of our members. My own was shouted from the rooftops. I mean, I don't really want to get into the naming and shaming game because I don't think that gets anywhere. I like to call it naming and educating, but we do shout very loudly.
I love that. So not naming and shaming, naming and educated.
Well,
educating.
I mean, I hope it's, one of our members had creates the most wonderful design. She's got a girl called Rachel Taylor, and Marks and Spencer copied one of her swirl designs. They put it on a T-shirt. There wasn't a hope that she could get recompense. She's a designer. They have a small design team. So with our help and with her own tenacity, again, she used all her social media blogs to shout about it, and naturally, no retailer wants to have this, reputational damage, and so every settlement we publish if we can. We usually have a straitjacket around us. We can get around that in quite a few ways. But anybody's got to look at our website to see the number of settlements that we've got on behalf of our members. We're very keen on mediation, and we go to various shows where copies are discovered, and we'll offer a mediation protocol to the exhibition organisers, and we've done about 4,000 or 5,000 of those, and that really is intervening between two, if you like, exhibitors at exhibitions. It leaves the exhibition organiser as a neutral facilitator of a process to sort something out. And only 3 have reached a final court hearing. And so there are lots of routes that can happen before a final court hearing, and that's really what we want to try and do.
I love the fact that you talk about educating people, not shaming them, showing people a different way of behaving.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it takes a long time. You mentioned sustainability, and that took a long time for the penny to drop, that we do not have a second chance to save the world or save the planet. There is no plan B. And in the same way, if we destroy the originality and the creativity of the creative industries, not just design, but, songwriters, filmmakers, if we destroy that, which is in the DNA of the United Kingdom and other countries, obviously, but it's a huge asset to our country. And if you think about design is their contribution to the GVA is 66% of financial services.
Significant.
We all hear about financial services and how wonderful they are, but I think it's time for the top table government to be putting design very much at the forefront. And I think if you look at what happened during the pandemic, there was a lot of adaptive manufacturing. There was a lot of design to provide solutions. And if you put those two together, it's this fast-moving design thinking that is all the time trying to think of different ways to do things that will improve, that will enhance, that will enable. And I'm still, got my soapbox trying to be heard, but we are getting heard more, and I will be very interested.
Good job. How many members do you have?
We have around 1,000.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. So when we think about the design industry and we look at specifically copywriting, is the copyright process able to apply to a product? I've heard you talking about products. Can you apply a copyright to a process? Like a trompe l'oeil, you talk that's considered a process.
Copyright is, you can't register copyright. It arises automatically. So if all of us in the studio painted a picture of you, everybody would own the copyright to that portrait of you. If I took a photograph and they took a photograph, we'd all own the copyright. So it's an automatic right. So as an author, you create your own copyright. There is something design law is very, very complicated, and there is copyright in artistic craftsmanship, but this hasn't been proven. There has been no determination in law about artistic craftsmanship in copyright, but it usually refers to sculptures or pieces that are not reproduced more than 50 of them. So, and design right is a different right. So I would, in my coffee, if I designed this and there was distinctive character, I could claim my design right in this, or this water carrier. Copyright is very different to design right. With design right, you can register it, or you can rely on unregistered rights. So if you register it, you have a piece of paper, a numbered certificate, says that you own the design, and that lasts for 25 years, renewable every 5 years. If, like the most designers in this country, you rely on unregistered rights, that can last up to 15 years.
So the thing that can be copied is the design. So the process to achieve the design can...
No, you can't protect process unless it's an invention, and an invention is usually covered by a patent, which is that's a completely different area.
Got it.
And a patent is for inventions or something that is you can't have degrees for unique, but it is unique. And that's a very, very large hoop to go through for most small businesses.
So for anybody who wants to decomplicate the process, because I think I've just complicated the process, they have to contact ACID.
Yes.
And what's your website?
www.acid.uk.com.
And first meetings with lawyers, initial consultations are free of charge.
Initial advice, and then depending on the strength of the case, then ACID members can go on to have reduced fees with specialist design lawyers who've got proven track record, who we've worked with a lot, and who give tremendous pro bono work to us, for which I have to say that we're unbelievably grateful. I've tried to get as much as we can to help small designers, and they have just been fantastic.
Well, you're fantastic. You're a fantastic human, and the Queen also thinks you're quite splendid. How was the process, the OBE process? Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I was very, very proud, and it was most unexpected, and I was delighted to receive it from Princess Anne, and went to Buckingham Palace and was duly presented. And I had a dress on that I'd had designed by a Scottish couturier, and she said, there's a much design theft in. She didn't use the word theft. She's infringement in the fashion world. So I said, well, clearly there is a lot. And I said that the designer who made my dress is a Scottish couturier, and she's had a lot of problems with infringement. And it just so happened that she'd designed Her Majesty the Queen's dress for the opening of Holyrood. So she was gracious enough to say, well, yes, I remember it well.
So you are in good hands there.
So
You're
yes,
wearing the same outfit.
It was a huge honour, and I felt that it gave me, it's given me a platform to be even more verbose about the things that I believe in, because I've worked very hard to try and raise awareness. And, I've just been used it as much as I can to try and influence change, and change for the better.
So do you have the letters after your name now? How does it work when you have an OBE?
Well, yes, you get, there's a Member of the British Empire, Order of the British Empire.
And you're an Order of the British Empire?
Commander of the British Empire, and then a dame.
And did you have to get down on one knee?
No. You stand in a sort of queue, and it's a beautiful, beautiful room. And you can take, 2 or 3 friends, and it's just a magical occasion. And then you have photographs in the foyer, and then we went to celebrate at the Ivy in Covent Garden. And somebody had, when we got a car to take us there, and when we got close to it, there was some bagpipes. And I said, wasn't that lovely? Because my name's Macdonald, as you know, and I got a tartan dress on. I said, oh, gosh, isn't that nice? And one of my friends had got a bagpiper to go to the Ivy and bagpipe me in. So
how beautiful!
Yeah, so that was very nice.
What were the decorations like at Buckingham Palace?
Elegantly sophisticated and grand. And I'd actually been there 2 or 3 weeks before. I'd been invited to go to a fashion event, and I was on my own, and I was going through. There's a beautiful room with the most magnificent furniture and masterpieces, and I was looking at all the paintings, and this very elderly lady came through. She said, are you on your own? So I said, well, yes, I am, but I'm fine, honestly. And she said, well, can I tell you about some of the pictures?
Yes, please.
So she told me, and then she said, do you mind if we sit down? So I said, no, not at all. She said, well, I'm one of the Queen's ladies, Her Majesty's ladies in waiting. She said, could I just give you a tip? The going to be lining up just down there. If you leave me now, you should get to the end of the queue, and you'll be presented first to the Queen and Prince Philip. So I trotted down, and I was. So it was all very exciting. The whole month was just...
What did it feel like to be in the presence of Prince Philip?
Well, very natural and warm and friendly. And of course, Prince Philip was a huge supporter for the design sector. He gave it the Prince Philip. I think it's still being presented by the Design Council annually, and he's been a huge advocate. When the Design Council first started 75 years ago. And it was really that the Design Council was started, it was suggested by Churchill to build back better, or, rebuild Britain after the war. So it's actually resonated now, because with with Boris, one of his slogans, I think we all know, is building back better. Well, I think that design makes a huge contribution to that, and it's important that it's protected and that it also commands the respect that that it shouldn't be taken without permission.
And on the subject of respect, keep flying the flag for ethics and kindness and fairness. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity.
You're amazing. Thank you, Dids. If you have enjoyed today's podcast as much as I have, please like and subscribe, and I'll be back here every Monday morning with more fabulous guests. See you then.